On the morning of March 23rd, 2021, a ship the length of the Empire State Building turned sideways in a canal barely wider than it was long, and got stuck. For 6 days it did not move. Behind it, the ocean filled with steel. 400 ships, then more, oil, furniture, car parts, coffee, live animals, medicine, floating in a line, going nowhere. And every single day that one ship sat wedged in the sand, roughly $9 billion of the world's trade simply stopped. One ship, one wrong angle. 12% of everything the planet ships by sea, frozen. Here's how a single accident can do that. To understand the disaster, you have to understand the ditch. The Suez Canal is a man-made shortcut through the desert of Egypt. 120 miles of water connecting the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. It has no locks. It is, in places, breathtakingly narrow. A single lane of water with the world's largest machines threading through it, one after another. Why does it matter so much? Because without it, a ship going from Asia to Europe has to sail all the way around Africa. That detour adds thousands of miles and roughly a week of sailing, burning fuel the whole way. So about 12% of global trade chooses the ditch. Every day, billions of dollars of cargo trusts its entire journey to one narrow channel of water with no backup. Remember that phrase. No backup. It's the whole reason 6 days of one ship became a global event. The ship was called the Ever Given. It is what the industry calls an ultra-large container vessel, 400 meters long, 200,000 tons, stacked with the equivalent of around 20,000 shipping containers. A floating wall of steel taller than most buildings it would ever pass. And that's the first uncomfortable truth. These ships have grown enormous, because bigger ships move cargo cheaper. But the canal did not grow with them. We built vessels the size of skyscrapers and kept sailing them through a channel dug for a smaller age. On that March morning, a wall of wind swept across the desert. A ship that tall is basically a giant sail. The Ever Given was pushed, lost steering in the narrows, and drove her bow straight into one bank and her stern into the other. She didn't sink. She didn't crash. She just turned. And became a 400-meter cork in the world's busiest bathtub drain. Now, you'd think you could just pull her out. You couldn't. And why is the part almost no one understands? A ship this size, fully loaded, weighs more than the Great Pyramid. When her bow buried into the canal bank, it drove into packed sand and clay with the full momentum of 200,000 tons behind it. She wasn't floating anymore. She was planted. You cannot simply tie a rope to that and pull. The most powerful tugboats in the region strained against her and moved nothing. She had wedged herself into the earth itself, so the rescue became something stranger and slower. They had to dig the canal out from around the ship. Dredgers clawed sand from beneath her bow, hour after hour, thousands of tons of it, and then they waited. For the moon. Because the one force big enough to help was the tide. While they dug, the line grew. This is the part that makes choke points so dangerous. And it's pure math. Ships arrive at the canal constantly, a steady stream, all day, every day. When the canal stops, the arrivals don't. They keep coming, and they pile up behind the blockage faster than anyone can clear them. By the time the Ever Given came free, hundreds of ships were waiting. And here's the cruel twist. Freeing the ship didn't end the crisis. Now you had a week's worth of the world's shipping all trying to squeeze through a single lane at once. A blockage doesn't just delay the ships behind it, it creates a wave, a crush of vessels that then floods every port downstream at the same time, jamming cranes, trucks, and warehouses thousands of miles away. The traffic jam moves inland, off the water entirely, and lands on shelves weeks later. The ship was stuck for 6 days. The supply chain felt it for months. Here's what people who work in freight understood immediately, and everyone else missed. We assume a system this important must have redundancy. A backup route, a spare canal, a plan B. It doesn't. The global supply chain is not built like the internet, which reroutes around damage. It's built for efficiency, the cheapest path, run as full as possible, with almost no slack. Slack costs money, and for decades the industry was rewarded for cutting every ounce of it. That makes the whole system breathtakingly cheap when it works. It also means that a handful of narrow places, a canal, a strait, a single port, carry loads with no real alternative. When one fails, there is no second one waiting. The Ever Given didn't reveal a flaw in the system. It revealed the design. We traded resilience for cost everywhere, on purpose. And most of the time, we never notice, until the wind blows wrong for 6 days. After the Ever Given, everyone swore things would change. Some did. Companies started holding a little more inventory. Quietly, a buffer, just in case. Some cargo now takes the long way around Africa by choice, trading cost for the safety of open water. Planners started drawing maps of their own choke points, asking a question they'd avoided for years. What's our single point of failure? But the ships are still enormous. The canals are still narrow, and 12% of world trade still threads that one line of water every day, trusting the wind to behave. The next stuck ship isn't a question of if. It's a question of where, so the next time a package is late, or a shelf sits empty and no one can quite explain why. Remember the Ever Given. Remember that the machine moving the world is far more powerful and far more fragile than it looks, that its strength is its thinness, and that somewhere out there right now, a ship the size of a skyscraper is threading a needle of water, and the whole world is quietly counting on it not to turn sideways. 6 days. One ship, 12% of everything. If you want to see the other places the world hangs by a thread, the 4 narrow straits that could freeze the global economy, or why the shelves really go empty, subscribe. New breakdown every week. And tell me in the comments, where were you when the internet couldn't stop laughing at one stuck boat? Turns out the joke was on all of us.